This point that we talked about earlier on, about whether or not we are still underneath the influence of the European Court of Justice, is very important. We began to talk about it, but surely that is the crucial question. If we are going to get powers back for this country, if we're going to reclaim sovereignty, we have to deal with the European Court of Justice, don't we?
Yeah, and I think one of the big things when Philip Hammond earlier mentioned the various opt-outs in terms of benefits and things, we don't know how the European Court of Justice is going to interpret that once it's challenged. If you go back to the Danish example in the early 90s, when they got various opt-outs, their thought-out opt-outs about citizenship, the ECJ, when it came to it, overruled it time and time again. So unless things are entrenched in treaty changes and therefore cannot be challenged in the courts, they're not going to be worth the paper they're written on.
But the important point about what's being proposed here is that there will be an international law decision which is binding on the member states and which the court itself, in the Rotman case, famously confirmed it has to take into account, where the heads of state and government, in a binding decision, give an interpretation of the treaties, the court has to take that interpretation into account.
Final question.
As a lawyer, taking into account is not the same thing as saying you can't do it.
It's a very important consideration that will guide the court.
Very, very quickly, is it fair that people like you are able to make the case for staying in the EU as you have been, whereas all those in the government who don't want to stay in have to stay quiet, zip their lips?
Just to be clear, I will make the case for staying in the EU if we get the right deal. I haven't seen the deal yet. We don't know what deal is going to come out of Thursday, or even if a deal is going to come.
There will be a rabbit in the end. Thank you both very much indeed. That's almost it for today. Thanks to all my guests. In an hour, Andrew Neil will be here with all the big stories on the Sunday politics. We will be back next week when we might, just might, have that deal from Brussels.